So we have basically taken over the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge, and this will become a base place for patriots from all over the country to come and to be housed here and live here. And we're planning on staying here for several years. And while we're here, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be freeing these lands up and getting the ranchers back to ranching, getting the miners back to mining, getting the loggers back to logging, and where they can do it under the protection of the people and not be afraid of this tyranny that's been upon them. And what will happen is Harney County will begin to thrive again. And one time they were the wealthiest county in the state, now they're the poorest county.
Yeah.
And we will reverse that in just a few years by freeing up their land and resources. And we're doing this for the people. We're doing this so the people can have their lands and their resources back where they belong. And it's really that simple. But we're the point of the spear that's going to bring confidence and strength to the rest of the people. And we're calling people to come out here and stand. And it's really that simple. We have a place for you now. We have a place for you to come. We have a place for you to get to stay warm. We have food planned and prepared. We need you to bring your arms, and we need you to come to the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge.
You guys,
thank you.
This is Blaine Cooper. I agree with what Ammon said. And bring your arms, and you know, if you guys had bullies in high school, anybody? They always kicked the crap out of you, and you got sick of it at one point, didn't you? And you had to put him in his place. I had to knock mine out, and we became best friends. Now, I'm not going to be best friends at the BLM. The point is, until that line is drawn and say, we've had enough of this tyranny, you are going to leave us alone, it will not change. And you're going to see, this is the power of America right here. People got together for this. It doesn't have to stop here. This could be a hope that spreads to the whole country, the whole United States. Everybody's looking for this hope because the government has beat us and oppressed us and took everything from us. They will not stop until we tell them no.
In the United States, a 150-strong armed militia has occupied a federal building in the state of Oregon. They're calling on other so-called American patriots to join them and stand up against the government in Washington.
And bring your arms, and you know, the point is, until that line is drawn and say, we've had enough of this tyranny, you are going to leave us alone, it will not change. And you're going to see, this is the power of America right here. People got together for this. It doesn't have to stop here. This could be a hope that spreads to the whole country, the whole United States. Everybody's looking for this hope because the government has beat us and oppressed us and took everything from us. They will not stop until we tell them no.
The militia say they're not ruling out resorting to violence either if police try to remove them from the federal premises. They've criticised the authorities for what they call a failed legal process concerning two locals convicted of arson. The case has caused a stir as both were charged under the anti-terrorism law, sparking debate over the federal government's authority. RT's Yiko Piskunov has more details.
This all comes off the back of two local farmers, first being convicted of arson, put in jail. This case was viewed by the authorities in the framework of the anti-terror law, which wasn't really explained to the locals of why this was done so. Then, after they served their time, it seems that a federal judge decided that it wasn't enough and, sentenced more time for these people. It seems that that's what caused this public outrage. It seems that it went much wider than the local public and touched the nerve of those opposing the federal government. We are looking at about 150 armed people who seem to have occupied federal building. They're calling the federal government as being tyranny. They're threatening to occupy more state buildings, and they're calling for more people to join them.
We're going to be freeing these lands up and getting the ranchers back to ranching, getting the miners back to mining, getting the loggers back to logging, and where they can do it under the protection of the people and not be afraid of this tyranny that's been upon them.
We know that local authorities have closed the local schools in that area. They're advising the residents not to go there.
All right, let's take you to Oregon now, where armed protesters have taken over the headquarters of the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge. The property is managed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. No government employees were on the land at the time because the refuge was closed for the holidays. Well, the armed occupation grew out of a protest earlier in the day in the nearby town of Burns. That rally was to show support for two local ranchers, Dwight and Stephen Hammond. They were convicted of arson and sentenced to 5 years in prison. They're expected to turn themselves in Monday morning. Now, one of the men behind the occupation of the wildlife refuge is the son of Nevada rancher Cliven Bundy. You remember him? He was at the center of a tense standoff last year with the Bureau of Land Management over grazing fees for his cattle. Eamon Bundy says he hopes other like-minded people will join the armed protest at the wildlife refuge. Watch and listen.
For those that understand what is going on, and those who want to and feel a need to stand, we're asking them to come. We have a facility that we can house them in. We have plenty work to do to start to unwind all of these unconstitutional land transactions and controls and we have plenty work to do. We need you to come and be unified with us so we can be protected and be together, and we're calling people to come, absolutely.
Eamon Bundy is on the phone with us now to explain what he hopes to accomplish. Thanks for making time. I know it's quite early there in Oregon. I want to start first with the question of the purpose of taking over this building. What are you hoping to accomplish to, I guess, engage the federal government to get the land returned from the refuge to the people who live there, a commutation of the sentences? What is the goal specifically?
Well, one is to get people aware of what's happening, that from the very beginning of the existence of this refuge, it has been destructive to the people of the county and to the people of the area. This refuge alone is 187,000 acres, and in order to make that 187,000 acres, it took 100 ranchers' homes and livelihoods and everything in order to make it. And so we have just a very good example of how government is taking and destroying livelihoods to make themselves a little park.
But Mr. Bundy, let me ask you, what specifically then, using that as the context of this standoff, what do you want from the government? Do you want the sentences for the Hammonds to be reduced, or do you want them commuted? What ends this?
Well, this isn't a standoff, by the way. We're not walking around with a bunch of guns and so forth. Excuse me?
The occupation, we'll use that term. That's fair.
Yeah, it basically we want the government to abide by the Constitution, abide by the authorities in which the people have given it, and to play by the rules so that the people can live and prosper without fear and without being terrorized.
What specifically, though? Because I'm not getting a specific answer. What does the government have to say, or a government official have to say that you'll find appropriate and say that this occupation will end?
Well, it has ended because we've basically removed them at this point from the management, which they do not have authority to be doing in the first place. We are extremely saddened by what has happened to Dwight and Stephen. Innocent people that have Stephen Hammond, innocent people that have been that are symptoms of a much greater problem. But and we're saddened that they're being forced to go to prison for the second time for the same crimes, up to 5 years, for 5 years.
How many
in
people?
Prison. But again, this is just it's a symptom of a greater problem, which is the federal government controlling the land and resources that belong to the people.
And he has been proven right on so many fronts. Pastor Manning, I thought you were being alarmist 8 years ago, but I tell you, we are in a fight for our lives right now. I mean, we are up against a satanic force. You're absolutely right.
No, we are at war, Alex. There's no doubt about that. And I've started a campaign to get Trump elected need to get him past the Republican nomination process, which is going to be very difficult because you've got both Democrats and Republicans working together to stop him with every power that they can muster. But we have called for Harlem for Trump, and I got to tell you, Alex, black people here in Harlem are touting that Trump is the man. They're finally hearing what they thought they were going to hear in Obama. They're hearing a man who's speaking truth to power. I wasn't for Trump, and Alex, I don't generally endorse candidates. I usually run them down to run down their pedigrees and talk about them and try to give people some idea how to make a choice. But Donald is the man. There's no doubt about it. He is the man for America. Obama has, in fact, Donald, Alex, is perhaps the only man I know right now that can put America back together again, because Obama has destroyed it. And anybody else who gets into power, who sits down in that Oval Office, is going to continue the policies of Obama and continue the destruction of this nation. Listen, you mentioned Anderson Cooper a few moments ago in Egypt, and we can come back to that. We can talk about that as a major subject at some point in time. But I got to tell you, Anderson Cooper ought to be put on trial. But he and Obama working to destroy the relationship that Egypt had with Israel, and to destroy the relationship that Egypt had with America, and to set off what it was now known as the Arab Spring or the Egyptian Spring.
They've now joined the Russians. They drove our oldest ally after Israel away from us. They're destroying the country.
Yeah, and so Donald is the only man that will look at this truthfully and say we as Americans cannot be great again until we examine this, and somebody needs to go to trial. Somebody needs to hear the gavel of a judge say life sentence or something on that order, especially Anderson Cooper.
That is why this is happening. Nobody ever gets punished now for their crimes.
Yeah, you can see that in the banking industry, Wall Street. These banking thieves, these banksters never get arrested for all of what they do in criminality in terms of banking. But now we see it in the media and politics as well.
You predicted what Obama would do. What do you expect him to do in this last year in office? I mean, the word is the hammer's coming down next week.
Well, yeah, and I suspect that it will. I think that word is an accurate word, and you used the word lawlessness and with respect to Obama, and I thought to myself as you were speaking that the lawlessness is not without purpose. If Obama can somehow or another bring about a reason for martial law, then that's what we're going to have to drink. That's what we're going to have to eat. That's what we're going to have to look at in order that Obama might maintain his power. How he's going to do it, I'm not sure, but I can tell you that he's not ready to give up that power for several reasons. One is that he thinks himself in terms of an egomaniac, that he ought to always be president. I mean, I saw that in him 6-7 years ago. I'm not sure exactly where we are, but I know martial law is on the table, Alex. And people
that's what Soros and the State Department do everywhere else, and they're clearly trying to do it. And that segues into Black Lives Matter and the whole police thing. No one can deny there's big problems with police departments. The Bill of Rights is in trouble. But when they make that the center issue to destabilize them, and then have the Democratic Party and the UN with these city initiatives, strong cities initiatives, actually take them over, I mean, this is scary.
Well, actually, what they're doing with items like Black Lives Matter is trying to see which is the most explosive issue to start either a race war. They're talking about taking down the statue of Robert E. Lee there in New Orleans. I'm sure you've been to New Orleans. You've seen you've seen that statue in front of the St. James Infirmary. You've seen that statue. It's a beautiful statue. They're talking about taking down the statue of Beauregard, taking down Jefferson Davis. And I got to tell you, they do that, you're going to get the sons of the Confederacy rising up to say, to hell no. We've had enough. We don't have a nation left anymore, so we've got to take to arms to defend our nation. They're testing which will go, Black Lives Matter or fighting the Confederates or the sons of the Confederacy, I think.
That's right. They're trying to stir everybody up.
Right. Yeah. And to get an explosive situation where Obama can then declare martial law, and he will become the supreme law person in America. And whatever he says goes. There'll be no Constitution. Nobody will have any constitutional protection. You, Alex, will not be able to broadcast. I can tell you that right now. They will shut you down like a cheap suit. They will not let you broadcast. So,
by the way, a major Supreme Court justice, I'm not at liberty to say which one, but we can probably make a guess, who's friends with Matt Drudge, told him at dinner had a private party. He said, I've been told they got the votes. Next year, they're coming to shut down talk radio, the Christian churches with the IRS. Look at all the persecution we've already seen against the press. I mean, it is incredible.